Good day to everyone. Today, we will be discussing about spiral of silence, a theory on public opinion. Elizabeth Neumann. Elizabeth Neumann was a German political scientist. Her most famous contribution is the model of the spiral of silence. Detailed in the spiral of silence, public opinion, our social scheme. The model is an explanation of how perceived public opinion can influence individual opinions or actions. In 1947, Neumann and her husband Erich Peter Neumann found Public Opinion Organization in Germany, and also she was a president of World Association of Public Opinion Research in 1978 to 1980. Through this spiral of silence theory, Neumann indirectly explains the Jews' status during World War II under the Nazis' control. Here, Adolf Hitler denominated the whole society, and the minority Jews become silent due to the fear of isolation or separation. The origin of the theory. The theory of the spiral of silence arose from a surprising discovery in connection with election research conducted during the 1965 German federal election campaign. Months before the election day in September 1965, Neumann and her staff at the Alan Bach Institute for Public Opinion Research launched a series of surveys designed to track the political opinions of the electorate throughout the campaign. From December 1964 to shortly before the election day, survey findings in voters' intentions remained practically unchanged. Months after months, the two major parties, the governing party and the opposing party, were in a dead heat, with about 45% of the population intending to vote for each party. Under such circumstances, it seemed impossible to predict which party was most likely to win the election. Interestingly, while voters' intentions remained unchanged over the course of many months, their expectations regarding the outcome of the election shifted dramatically during the same period. But then, the results began to change. The percentage of respondents who expected the governing party to win rose continuously, while the opposing party lost ground. But as early as July 1965, the governing party was clearly in the lead regarding voters' expectations. Late in the campaign, the bandwagon effect came into play, as a sizable number of former opposing party supporters or undecided voters cast their ballots for the party they expected to be victorious. How could parties strengthened have remained constant for so long while expectations to who would win changed so dramatically? Yan ang aaralin natin sa topic na ito. Before we proceed to the discussion of the main theory, first we will define the term spiral of silence and the term public opinion. Spiral of silence refers to the increasing pressure people feel to conceal their views when they think they are in the minority. The one view dominated the public scene, and the others disappear from the public awareness. In other words, people fear of separation or isolation from those around them. They tend to keep their attitudes to themselves when they think they are in the minority. This process is called spiral of silence. In the context of the theory, the term public opinion refers to the opinions or behaviors that can be displayed or expressed in public without running the risk of social isolation, or in some cases, that even must be displayed to avoid danger of isolation. Thus, public is not meant in legal or political sense as something that is freely accessible to all and concerns the general population or society as a whole. Instead, the concept is interpreted from a social-psychological perspective as a state of consciousness in which individuals are aware that their actions are seen by all or heard by all, requiring that they constantly monitor not only their own actions, but also the reactions of others in their environment. Spiral of silence in the study of human communication and public opinion the theory that people's willingness to express their opinions in controversial public issues is affected by largely unconscious perceptions of those opinions as being either popular or unpopular. Specifically, the perception that one's opinion is unpopular tends to inhibit or discourage one's expression of it, while the perception that it is popular tends to have opposite effect. The three main ideas of the spiral of silence are: first, there is a quasi-statistical organ; second, public opinion and the spiraling process; and third, the threat of isolation. First, there is a quasi-statistical organ. Each individual has a sixth sense to monitor the prevailing opinion on a given issue. Elizabeth is constantly amazed at the human ability to discern the climate of public opinion. Science speaks on five bodily receptors through which people sense their environment: the eye for sight, ear for sound, tongue for taste, nose for smell, and skin for touch. The veteran pollster suggests that humans have a quasi-statistical organ, a sixth sense that tells us information about what society in general is thinking and feeling. It is as if people come quasi-statistical organ equipped with antenna that shift to every changes in the social breeze. The individual uses the content of the mass media and the original observation to determine the climate of opinion. Second, public opinion and the spiraling process. For this theory, it relies on the idea that in a given situation, we all possess a sort of intuitive way of knowing what the prevailing opinion happens to be. The spiral is created or reinforced when someone, the perceived opinion majority, speaks out confidently in support of the majority opinion. Hence, the minority begins to be more and more distant from a place where they are comfortable to voice their opinion and begin to experience the fear of isolation and remain silent. The spiral effect is experienced in so much as this activates a downward spiral where fears continually build within the minority opinion holder. Hence, the minority opinion is never voiced. The media plays an important role in this process, especially in dictating or perceptually dictating the majority opinion. The closer an individual feels their opinion resides to hold the majority opinion, the more likely they are willing to voice it in public and discuss. Lastly, the threat of isolation. In this social environment, people have fear of rejection to express their own opinions and views. It is called fear of isolation. This refers to the tendency of people not to speak up about policy issues in public or among their family, friends, and work colleagues when they believe their own point of view is not widely shared. The possibility that people can form more out of a desire to identity with the winner than to avoid isolation. For example, after an important election is over, a greater percentage of people report voting for the victor than the ballot totals would indicate. But she doesn't consider false support as attempts to climb belatedly to the bandwagon and bask to reflected glory. Rather, she interprets the pity lies as a defensive strategy to avoid a social stigma that comes from being a deviant on value-laden issues. Even though a go-along-to-get-along approach might brand a person as a conformist or a hanger-on, the people respond to her surveys indicate that rejection is even worse. In summary, few assumptions were made. The spiral of silence theory describes as a dynamic process the prediction about public opinion in the mass media, which gives more coverage for the majorities in the society and gives very less coverage for minorities. Second, in this social environment, people have fear of rejection to express their opinion or views, and they know well that behaviors will make a better likelihood. It's called fear of isolation. Third, being the part of minority, people lost their confidence and silence or mute to express their views because of the fear of isolation, or they feel alone or unsupported. Fourth, Sometimes the minorities withdraw their expressed opinion from public debates to secure themselves from the majority. And lastly, maximum numbers get more vocal space in the society and lesser number become less vocal space or become silent.